These are all the books that I used to study Chinese over the years. In today's video, I'm going to be walking you through that whole stack of books and telling you which ones I thought were the most useful. Okay, but before talking about any of the books that I used to learn Chinese, I want to talk about maybe the thing that's really the most useful to a bunch of language learners, and definitely the most useful to me, was the dictionary. I think a dictionary is extremely helpful for having access to a bank of all of the vocabulary words you would ever need. I mean, you know what a dictionary is, you know how useful it is even in English. So I think even before you invest in any of the other books that I'm going to talk about, you should definitely invest in a dictionary in the language that you want to learn. Okay, so now the first books that I actually ever picked up in learning Chinese was this series called My First Chinese Reader. This was basically what they gave us when we were like 7 or 6 years old in Chinese school, and that was my first exposure to Chinese ever. So, I mean, you could just open it up. They have basic vocabulary words, there's a bunch of colors everywhere. It's basically meant for elementary school, little kids. So, I mean, if you have a little kid that wants to learn Chinese, then maybe this set of books, the My Chinese Reader books, might be the most helpful, but I don't think these would be very useful for regular aged people, let's just say. But I will say, if you don't mind the childish nature of these books or workbooks, I mean, they do have workbooks that come along with it, and they are pretty fun to go through if you like childish things, I guess. And I mean, they take you through everything from like writing characters, learning how to write characters. So if you really want a really basic start, I think My First Chinese Reader would be a good way to go. Moving on, so the next one I want to talk about is the Zhongwen series, which I think this is for a lot more older students. Maybe not a lot more, but a little bit older students, maybe in middle school. This one has a bit more advanced stories, so it has like At a Chinese School or Go Shopping. So things that are a bit more advanced than just today is blah 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 and I'm this year's old. So I think that if you're looking for a little bit more dialogue, I mean, they even have like poems in this one. So, I mean, it's definitely a lot more advanced, and I thought it was a better textbook per se than just like a childish let's get started in Chinese. But because it is kind of textbook style, it was probably meant for use in a classroom with a teacher leading the learning. So I'm not really sure if this would be helpful if you're not in a Chinese school. I mean, you could try it if you want more of a textbook-like feel, but I will go into more depth on some of the resources that I used to self-study when I was not in Chinese school. But before I move on to the next series of books, I do want to talk about the workbook that came with it. One thing I remember feeling was pretty challenging was that all of the characters didn't have pinyin. And when I was learning, I'm from a non-Chinese background, so it was really difficult for me to read the characters and do the homework quickly. I remember it taking me like 3 hours or so to do each homework section, while other kids in my class who were from a Chinese background were able to ask their parents and get the pinyin translations, which was much easier for them to do the homework. So I would say, unless you're looking for a real challenge, maybe start with a book that might help you gradually go into reading characters, because this one definitely makes you jump into the deep end of things. Okay, and then another series I have is this Hanyu series. I honestly don't remember where in my Chinese learning journey that I studied this, but I mean, from my handwriting inside, it looks like it was from a pretty young age. I mean, I have these practice things inside with characters that I practice writing characters for our weekly dictation tests. So I think this was a pretty young age, honestly. I even have a little note on one of the papers that says I did Duolingo later that evening. So, I mean, I think this book feels also pretty childishy with a bunch of little kids in it. Here, let me show you. You can see there's like little kids there and there. So again, feels pretty childishy, but if you want like a basic introduction, then Hanyu series might be one to check out. But again, I would probably take everything I just said about the Hanyu series with a grain of salt, because I did not use that book for as long as I used some of the other series that I mentioned in the video. So definitely check it out if you want sort of a beginner feel. But I think the most advanced book that I've shown so far is probably the Zhongwen series. Okay, and then the last series that I used ever in Chinese school is the Young Chinese books. And these ones are specifically meant for, it says HSK or SAT2 subject tests, which I don't think they offer anymore, but, and also AP tests. So if you are someone that's trying to prepare for a certain test and really wants like a structured curriculum, and you want a textbook to guide you through that, some workbooks to guide you through that, I think the Young Chinese series is one of the best ones to go through. They have textbooks, they also have workbooks like the other ones, but then they also have practice tests, which are really helpful for preparing for certain tests. So they have like reading comprehension, they have listening comprehension. That was a really special thing in this book, was the listening comprehension, because I'd never had that in any of my other series before. So this one definitely takes a huge step forward in terms of advancement level, but if you're really preparing for a test, then I would really recommend the Young Chinese series. Okay, and then the book that I used the most recently was the HSK4 vocabulary book. Now this alone is probably not good enough to pass the HSK4 test, but I think that it has a really good vocabulary list. It basically has all of the vocabulary lists for all of the HSK tests. So it has like the characters, the pinyin, and then the English on the last column. And so if you're going to make vocabulary cards, flashcards out of this, that will be a really great way to study. So definitely do invest in this book if you're really serious about taking the HSK tests. But if not, then I'll probably look at the other series that I mentioned in this video. Alright, so that wraps up all of the books that I used to learn Chinese over the years. Hopefully you found some of them helpful and they can help you in your own Chinese learning journey. And I'll see you in the next one.